Buying real estate in Scotland is very different to buying real estate in England. Today I will discuss these differences and also give advantages and disadvantages of buying real estate in Scotland. So point number one is this: when you buy property in England, it can be freehold or leasehold. Now leasehold means you own the property but not the land it is built on. In effect, you rent the land where the property sits from the freeholder, in effect, the landlord, and you will pay ground rent to the landlord. Now, this is mostly the case with flats. However, sometimes houses can also be leasehold. In Scotland, though, everything is freehold, meaning you own the land and the property. So I think this is a definite advantage of buying real estate in Scotland. Point number two, home reports. In Scotland, the seller must provide a home report survey. Now, the home report is a survey on the property's condition. It also includes information on energy efficiency and a complete questionnaire completed by the seller. In England, you only need an energy performance certificate, and I feel this is another advantage of buying in Scotland. Number three, gazumping, where somebody comes in with a higher offer for a home when you have already had an offer accepted yourself. Now, this can be very problematic, especially because before contracts are exchanged, normally a survey is done on a house which can cost thousands. So if somebody comes in with a higher offer, you may pay thousands for this survey and lose the money. Now, in Scotland, this rarely happens, and this is because as soon as an offer is accepted, it is taken off the market. In Scotland, formal offers are put forward by a solicitor rather than an estate agent, and this, I think, is another advantage of buying property in Scotland. Number four, note too that the prices and offers work differently in Scotland to England. Most homes in Scotland are sold through a blind bidding system. That means sellers will ask for offers over a minimum price, and interested buyers give sealed bids and suggest a timescale for moving in. And of course, the highest bidder wins the property. Number five, stamp duty is also different when you buy property in England or Scotland. Now, from the point of view of a foreign buyer, a non-resident, the stamp duty can be an advantage or a disadvantage in Scotland compared to England, depending on how much the property costs. So, for a property of £250,000, stamp duty in Scotland will be £12,100, whereas in England it will be slightly more expensive at £12,500. But for a property of £500,000, you will pay £43,350 as a non-resident foreign buyer, whereas in England you'll pay a lot less at £37,500. But on a very expensive property of 10 million, for example, in Scotland you'll pay £1,558,350 stamp duty, whereas in England you'll actually pay more at £1,611,250. So what I'm saying is it depends on the property. If a property is very cheap, it's actually more expensive stamp duty in England. On a property of £500,000, £1 million, you'll pay more stamp duty in Scotland. And on a very expensive property, you'll actually pay more stamp duty in England again. So it depends on the price of the property. Number six, and I think this is actually quite important, Scotland is actually more pro-tenant than England. Now, Scotland has recently introduced legislation which means a rent freeze and a banning of tenant eviction until the very least the end of March 2023, which is definitely not good news if you're a buy-to-let investor in Scotland. And also, if you look at the Airbnb market, more and more restrictions are being introduced in Scotland, and in particular in the city of Edinburgh. So this is another disadvantage, I think, of buying real estate in Scotland, both this rent freeze and banning of eviction, which you never know could be extended, and the more restrictive Airbnb market. Number 7, another thing you also have to consider is Scotland potentially could leave the United Kingdom, so you have to see the implications of that. Is that going to be a benefit to Scotland, or could Scotland lose as a result? It very much depends on your point of view, but it's another thing you have to consider when buying real estate in Scotland. Number 8, interest rates are actually going up, as they are in many parts of the world. And that being the case, if interest rates continue to rise, this could really depress property prices in Scotland, as it will in England as well. So that is another disadvantage. And number 9 as well, house prices, like the rest of the UK, in Scotland, have been going up by a fair bit over the last few years. So it may have reached a point where it's potentially not the right time to buy. A peak could have been reached because of higher prices and, of course, interest rate rises too. And finally, number 10, let's look at the population. Now, the population of Scotland in the long term is expected to decline. So in 2022, population is around 5.46 million. It's expected to increase slightly in 2028 to 5.48 million, but then decline by 1.8% by 2045. And the population is expected to actually decline even further than that as well. Now, this is according to the actual national records of Scotland. So this is only one survey. However, I must add as well, the population in the 2 largest cities, Edinburgh and Glasgow, are expected to rise in the future. So given all these points, should you invest? Well, based on today's 10 points I've given, the answer unfortunately has to be no, and it has to be no at least for now anyway. But if you do decide to invest, where should you invest? Well, I think the only 2 cities to consider are Glasgow and Edinburgh, as they are by far the largest and most important cities in Scotland. But out of the 2, which one should you go for? Well, I would go for Glasgow because the average property prices are much lower than Edinburgh. In Edinburgh, the average price is around £277,000, whereas in Glasgow, it's much lower at around £173,000. And I think these figures take on more meaning when I tell you that the average salary in Glasgow is similar to the average salary in Edinburgh. So it shows that I think affordability is becoming an issue in Edinburgh when it comes to buying property. Also, too, the yields in Glasgow are higher than the yields in Edinburgh. So at a stretch in Glasgow, if you really do your homework, you can get up to 7, maybe 7.5% gross. But in Edinburgh, the maximum really you're looking at is 5.5 to 6% for a 3-bedroom property. So I would say Glasgow definitely has an advantage over Edinburgh in this respect. And also, as I said, the Airbnb restrictions coming in to Edinburgh are tighter than those in Glasgow, although Airbnb restrictions are coming probably to the whole of Scotland, but Edinburgh is really being hit at the moment. So perhaps I would actually go for Glasgow if I made an investment now, but overall my feeling is that you shouldn't go into this market, at least for now. Wait to see maybe 2 or 3 years down the line what happens, because we're going to see if Scotland leaves the United Kingdom, potentially house prices would have dropped a lot by then, and maybe, just maybe, it could be a good time to get in. Anyway, that's it for today. I would love to know your thoughts. Please comment below, and I shall see you very soon on the next video.